The scandal behind Chaplin's paternity trial snapped into focus the moment the envelope containing the court-ordered blood test slid across the table. Pens stopped. A clerk turned too quickly toward the judge's bench.
Your Honor,
One of Chaplin's
the
attorneys
evidence
stepped back as if he
clearly
touched something he shouldn't have. Inside that envelope was the test Chaplin was expected to take, and the one he refused. The refusal never appeared in the polished public narrative, buried behind statements about procedural disagreements and legal strategy. Yet the document's timestamp, its signatures, and its missing addendum told a different story entirely. Why was a single test result so dangerous that it had to disappear? If this story reached you, where are you watching from? Drop your city below, and let's see how far legends still travel. The public version of the Chaplin paternity case unfolded with polished symmetry. Newspapers printed the same smiling courtroom sketch of Chaplin, positioned at nearly identical angles. Interviews framed him as cooperative, calm, prepared to address the situation, a phrase repeated across radio and print within the same week. Cameras caught him entering the courthouse with perfect timing, a brief nod to reporters, a measured step toward the rail, a slight turn toward his attorney. Studio statements described the case as a routine civil matter, each using almost the same structure. Headlines referred to a straightforward dispute, and the wording matched so precisely that multiple outlets appeared to follow the same unseen template. Crowds outside the courthouse held signs supporting Chaplin, placed conveniently for photographer. The same 3 signs appeared in different news clips, unchanged in position. Even his brief comments sounded rehearsed, short, balanced, consistent. Every element of the public-facing story formed a neat, well-lit tableau. A famous figure cooperating with due process, a predictable legal proceeding, and a narrative that lined up cleanly across interviews, articles, and prepared statements. The cracks appeared in details most people overlooked. In one early interview, Chaplin said he had already seen the necessary paperwork, while another quoted him saying he was waiting to review the documents. A court reporter present at a hearing in one account was missing from another outlet's version of the same moment. A timeline in a local paper claimed the filing occurred mid-morning, but the courthouse ledger placed the initial submission late afternoon. A friend of the plaintiff described a meeting in her kitchen, but another source placed that meeting at a cafe that no longer existed at the stated time. One court document showed edits along the margin, where the typewriter imprint changed slightly, suggesting a replaced line. A quote attributed to Chaplin's attorney appeared in 2 unrelated papers word for word, though neither article referenced the other. A reporter who tried to confirm the date of a supposed private negotiation was redirected without an answer. A photograph of Chaplin leaving court included a street sign that did not match the route described in the write-up. None of these details exposed anything significant alone, but together, they pushed faint misalignment into view. A few people registered the inconsistencies, though none addressed them publicly. A courtroom journalist kept one note from her notebook out of the published article, circling a time discrepancy she couldn't reconcile. A radio producer replayed an interview twice, focusing on a line where Chaplin's phrasing shifted unexpectedly. A relative of the plaintiff avoided discussing the day the test was supposedly requested, answering briefly and redirecting to unrelated topics. A late-night call to the courthouse switchboard was logged at an hour when the building was officially closed. A fan collecting clippings noticed that a photograph of Chaplin on the courthouse steps reappeared in a later article, but labeled as taken a week afterward. A legal assistant hesitated before confirming whether the test order had been formally delivered that day. A neighbor near Chaplin's residence gave a short, clipped response about the timing, then declined further comment. These quiet, scattered reactions left no conclusions, only signs that the surface narrative was beginning to drift. As coverage continued, statements across outlets began sounding increasingly uniform. Chaplin's attorney repeated the same phrasing in 3 separate appearances, even when the questions differed. 2 reporters offered different accounts of a meeting time by less than an hour, each insisting their version matched the court's schedule. A detail about standard procedure was pushed more prominently in articles, despite no previous reference to it. A single courthouse photo appeared repeatedly, even when newer material existed. A harmless question about the delivery of the test order received a refusal. A essay document surfaced at exactly the moment scrutiny rose. The narrative fit almost too well. The first clean break appeared in a short court transcript released during routine coverage. One line listed the judge's directive: blood test order delivered to respondent on March 5, 11:10 a.m. But a photograph published the same week showed Chaplin arriving at the courthouse at 12:03 p.m., stepping out of his car with his attorney. The timestamp printed along the edge of the negative matched the photographer's log, verified by the paper's own archive. This wasn't a matter of mistaken labeling. The courthouse entrance clock in the background displayed the same time as the negative, a little after noon. That meant Chaplin could not have received the order inside the building at 11:10. A reporter circling the transcript paused at the line. A clerk reviewing old notes placed her thumb over the time and left it there. A junior editor preparing a brief hesitated before typing the hour, then checked the photo again. The contradiction wasn't large, but it could not be smoothed into the official narrative. Chaplin was documented in two places at one time. The timeline, carefully presented across interviews and articles, no longer aligned with itself. The responses were small and almost instinctive. A courtroom reporter froze mid-question when she noticed the discrepancy while preparing an afternoon segment. Another read the transcript line twice, then a third time, without adding it to her notes. A publicist asked about the delivery time cleared his throat before giving a short statement that avoided the hour entirely. A fan analyzing the photo online paused the frame repeatedly, checking the clock behind Chaplin's shoulder. One columnist offered a correction during a radio segment, then retracted it seconds later, replacing it with a vaguer comment about morning proceeding. A courthouse employee went silent when asked whether deliveries usually happened before noon. Two sources gave different descriptions of the moment. One said the test order was handed to Chaplin early. Another insisted it was as he arrived. A photo editor zoomed into the negative, zoomed out slowly, and saved the image without cropping it. When a reporter requested clarification about the 11:10 timestamp, an official responded too quickly, "That's not relevant," before ending the call. Another asked for the time to be, and the answer shifted slightly. Within hours, attempts to align the timeline surfaced. A revised version of the transcript was posted, replacing 11:10 a.m. with late morning. A quote from Chaplin's attorney, originally referencing the moment the order was handed over, was quietly swapped for a line about ongoing legal steps. One publication edited its article after posting, removing the exact time from its summary. Another added a parenthetical note claiming possible clerical delay, though no such explanation appeared in court documents. A spokesperson issued a short, stiff statement saying that timing discrepancies are normal in high-profile cases, without addressing the conflicting evidence. Reporters attempting follow-up interviews were redirected or told the judge was unavailable. Staffers preparing a televised timeline adjusted the graphics slightly, shifting the appearance of the event earlier by several minutes. In internal emails, employees repeated the same line. The order was delivered as scheduled, even when asked different questions. These patches appeared quickly, smoothly, and without acknowledgement, but each one made the original crack stand out sharper. After the revisions, quiet tension formed around the mismatch. A senior reporter stayed late, reviewing courthouse entry logs. Another double-checked a public record and found no official note of an 11:10 delivery. An insider avoided answering anything related to the morning timeline. Comment sections beneath reprinted photos began pointing out the same clock in the background. A clip of Chaplin arriving at noon circulated again, replayed more than expected. A harmless question about the delivery time received a refusal. Two sources offered lightly contradictory versions in the same afternoon. The surface wasn't smooth anymore. At 8:42 a.m. on March 5, 1944, Inside a small administrative room adjacent to Department 8 of the Los Angeles Superior Court, 4 people were present: a court clerk, a deputy bailiff, Chaplin's attorney, and a medical courier holding a sealed envelope marked biological order, immediate. The room was narrow, fluorescent lights humming overhead, a clock on the wall ticking toward the scheduled hearing. According to the official narrative, the test order was to be delivered inside the courtroom just before Chaplin's appearance. Yet Chaplin's attorney entered this smaller room through the side hallway, not the main corridor he later claimed. The clerk lifted a stack of files, paused in plaque, ed them down again without opening any. The courier set the envelope on the table and stepped back, glancing toward the door. A phone on the desk rang once briefly, then stopped before anyone moved. The attorney checked his watch twice, though the hearing time had not changed. The clerk opened a ledger but wrote nothing. These were the first signs that the morning did not unfold according to the public timeline. The deputy bailiff closed the door quietly, pressing until the latch clicked. The courier placed his phone face down beside the sealed envelope. The attorney flipped his notebook shut immediately after opening it halfway. A short exchange took place, too low for the room's dictation device to capture fully. The clerk shifted slightly, checking over her shoulder toward the hallway window. The courier slid the envelope toward the attorney, who hesitated before touching it. The bailiff moved to the far corner, adjusting the blinds by 2 slats. The clerk reached for a second ledger, opened it, closed it again, and set it beneath the first. A folded note clipped to the courier's clipboard was removed and pocketed without signature. The attorney rested his hand on the envelope, then pulled it back. Someone whispered a sentence that ended with the word timing. The bailiff left the room briefly, returned, and locked the drawer containing routine court orders. The courier's device lit up with an alert. He cleared it and tucked the phone into his jacket. The clerk retrieved a form, read it, and placed it upside down. A small security camera mounted outside the door was angled slightly toward the opposite wall as the bailiff passed. The attorney stood, paced once, then stopped in front of the table without speaking. The envelope remained unopened. The turning point came when the courier withdrew a second envelope, thinner than the first, stamped with a different date, March 6, a day after the scheduled delivery. The stamp showed received but lacked the corresponding initials required for chain of custody. The clerk fell silent, her hand still hovering above the ledger. The attorney straightened, closing his notebook too fast and sliding it into his briefcase. The bailiff cleared his throat, stepped back and glanced at the clock. 8:57 a.m., minutes before the public hearing was to begin. The courier placed the second envelope beside the first, then retracted his hand as if reconsidering. The attorney ended the interaction abruptly, lifting the original envelope and tucking it under his arm without opening it. The bailiff announced that they were done, though no paperwork had been completed. As the group prepared to leave, the clerk asked whether both envelopes should be logged. The attorney answered no, then amended it seconds later to not yet. This inconsistency shifted the tone of the room. The courier exited through the back hallway, bypassing the main corridor entirely. The official order that Chaplin refused to take had 2 versions, only one of which would ever appear in the record. Within minutes, the clerk rewrote the morning log, omitting the side room. The bailiff removed the loose form from the ledger and added it to a discard folder. The courier sent a single message transmission. Completed. A phone call from the clerk's desk delivered one brief instruction before disconnecting. The second envelope was placed into an unmarked drawer and locked. A photograph taken in the hallway that morning was later deleted during routine archiving. Someone instructed a junior staffer, "Don't mention that room." This was the shadow behind the story. Minutes after the courier left the side room, the courthouse staff shifted into controlled motion. The clerk closed the ledger quickly and slid it into a lower drawer. The bailiff moved the untouched envelope from the center of the table to a different desk, stacking 2 unrelated files on top of it. A short, measured phone call was made from the clerk's desk, 1 sentence, then a disconnect. The hallway security camera, still angled from the bailiff's earlier adjustment, was turned back toward its default position. A junior staffer walking past the open doorway was redirected down the main hall without explanation. A whiteboard listing the morning's tasks had one line erased and rewritten with a later time. A message alert appeared on the clerk's device. She opened it, deleted it, and set the phone face down. The attorney folded a small note, placed it in his pocket, and stepped into the corridor. The bailiff locked the drawer containing the unused forms twice, checking the handle before stepping away. The schedule pinned near the door was replaced with a clean version that listed no activity in the side room. By late morning, the first reassembled account began forming. A timestamp on the hearing prep sheet was crossed out, replaced with a rounded hour. Two staff members compared their notes. One pointed to a conflicting line, the O. They struck it through entirely and rewrote it with fewer words. A message drafted for the court administrator was edited 3 times before being sent, each revision removing one more reference to the side room exchange. Another staffer paused before sending a summary update, deleted 2 sentences, and submitted the shorter version. 2 statements were prepared regarding the test order, one referencing courtroom delivery, the other describing only receipt of necessary document. A subtle change appeared in the morning record, shifting the order's entry from the side room to the main courtroom without any notation. A file destined for the clerk's archive was printed twice, the second copy adjusting the margins so the delivery time fell closer to the fold. Someone quietly told a coworker, "Simplify it," while pointing to the section detailing the sequence of events. Calendars were updated to shorten the time Chaplin was said to have spent in the building. A small contradiction in staffing logs was ignored deliberately. An email circulated with 1 page missing. No one requested the missing line. Across the courthouse and adjoining offices, coordination took shape. A brief call went out from the bailiff's line. 1 sentence, no follow-up. 2 administrators met in the hallway, exchanged a folder without speaking, and walked off in opposite directions. A document that normally required a signature page was passed directly to the courthouse record's office with no cover note. The planned verbal recap for the judge was replaced by a written summary delivered through a clerk. A correction request appeared in the clerical inbox instructing staff to revise Section 2, with no explanation. A meeting discussing the morning session was moved to a smaller conference room and shortened to 10 minutes. A deputy delivered an update to the legal team that excluded any mention of the side room. 2 conflicting instructions were sent minutes apart, one calling for detailed accounting, the other for strict brevity. A name was removed from the internal distribution list for hearing summaries without an announcement. A file shared among 3 desks arrived the final time with its attachments omitted. When a junior assistant asked which timeline to use, the answer was, "Follow the main version," without identifying which version that was. By the end of the week, the revised account settled into place. The final draft of the day's proceedings was approved within seconds of submission. A signature appeared on the summary from a supervisor who had not been present. The file containing the original ledger scrap was moved to a restricted cabinet. The envelope from the courier was placed in long-term storage. The side room door was locked, and its room number removed from the internal directory. A digital record for March 5 was time-stamped 2 hours after its listed creation. A brief message circulated, "This should be enough." No one added the missing part. In the days after the side room meeting, routines at the courthouse changed in small, visible ways. A clerk who usually cut through the side corridor started taking the longer route past the public stairwell. 2 staffers approaching each other near the record's office lowered their voices automatically as they passed. Instructions at morning briefings began to repeat. A directive delivered once, then restated with almost identical wording. A junior employee stopped mid-sentence during a status update, restarted with fewer details, and moved on. Files that once moved quickly from one desk to another lingered on in trays for several extra minutes before being handed over. Hearings started 4 or 5 minutes late, with people standing just outside the door before entering. One staff member checked their badge twice at the same security point. Another read through the same 2-page report, flipped back to the first page, and read it again without marking it. Conversations at the end of the hallway ended abruptly when a third person approached. A supervisor corrected a minor date in a memo that already matched the docket. A report was printed, then reprinted with one line shortened. Phones were kept face down on desks. Laptops closed the moment footsteps passed behind chairs. Across the paperwork, processes drifted out of alignment. Routine forms arrived at the clerk's window with required sections left blank that had never been skipped before. Two versions of the same hearing summary circulated, one mentioning pre-hearing consultation, another starting only at the judge's entrance. A case file in the registry showed two updates within minutes. The second edit removed a reference to a side-room preparation. Meeting notes, once detailed and chronological, shrank to short bullet points. An instruction memo originally stating, "must record exact time of service," appeared later as "record time of service where necessary." One clerk began double-checking the DG's signature block before finalizing entry. A report returned from a supervisor was stamped "revise" without any explanation. A request meant for the paternity case file was forwarded to a general civil inbox, then returned with a handwritten "wrong file" note attached. Timestamps on the internal log showed an event recorded before its scheduled time on the calendar. An appointment labeled "Test Order Coordination" was later edited to "Case Coordination," with the subject line left unchanged in the archive. A policy notice from higher up was reprinted with a line removed from the section on evidentiary orders. A supervisor sent a brief message, "Use the simplified version," attaching a shorter template. A tracking spreadsheet appeared under a second file name, with one column missing. Before forwarding an email about the case, a clerk removed the attachment containing the early draft language. Among staff closest to the trial, behavior shifted further. Coworkers who normally exchanged quick remarks near the stairwell began looking past each other and continuing. Answers during informal check-ins grew shorter, limited to basic confirmations. A minor disagreement over where to store a batch of exhibits ended quickly with a flat "that's fine," and no follow-up. During one internal review, two people started speaking at once, offering different starting times for the same morning, then stopped and deferred to the senior clerk. Another staffer checked behind him before opening a drawer that held older paternity files. Low conversations in the copy room broke off when footsteps approached. One employee left early twice in a week without writing it on the attendance board. Another stayed well past closing, alone at a desk with stacks of trial transcripts and docket books. A supervisor reassigned a simple filing task away from the clerk who had been in the side room that morning. On shared terminals, a message about hearing sequence appeared briefly in an inbox and then vanished. Two staffers comparing notes on March 5 discovered that their copies listed different times for when Chaplin was served. A summary line in the internal case overview was rewritten twice, each revision removing detail. During an hour that was usually busy with hallway traffic, doors stayed closed and the corridor stayed quiet. Outside the building, faint discrepancies began to register. A journalist sent a request to the court asking for clarification on the exact time Chaplin received the test order. A draft public statement describing the hearing day was revised shortly before release, replacing "order served" with "order discussed." A line referencing pre-hearing administrative steps disappeared from a press note between its first and second version. A spokesperson asked for more time before answering a basic question about when the order was placed in Chaplin's hands. Two different counts of court-ordered tests requested appeared in separate year-end reports. A public file released to researchers lacked an attachment referenced in its own index. A court website was updated overnight, altering a single-time entry by several minutes. An inquiry opened by a legal society used minimal wording, listing only the date and case number. One evening, a clerk locked the same drawer twice before. On another floor, a file with Chaplin's name remained open on a screen while its user watched the doorway instead of scrolling. In a side office, his name was spoken once, then avoided. A single folder on the paternity shelf sat slightly out of line. Nothing fit cleanly anymore. The first break in the record appears in a single, two-page court form dated February 12, 1944. The header lists it as a paternity test order service confirmation. On the first line, the clerk's handwriting states the order was served at 10:42 a.m. The second line notes the location as Room 3B. The signature below belongs to the bailiff on duty, but the timestamp in the corner, stamped mechanically, not written, reads 0958. The margin shows a faint erased notation. 3A, overwritten with 3B. Two punch holes on the left are clean. One on the right is jagged, as if repunched after adjustment. Attached to the form is a carbon copy with the same date but a different service time. 11:06 a.m. The bailiff's initials match, but the curve of the H in his signature differs from earlier documents filed that week. In the archive log, this form appears twice, once under filed Feb 12 and again under filed Feb 13, amended. No amendment note exists. No explanation accompanies the duplicate entry. The inconsistencies widen when additional documents are placed side by side. A memo summarizing pre-test administrative steps is dated one day after the service form, even though it describes events prior to order delivery. Another file, a clerk's internal note, references a meeting in chambers 9:40 a.m., which occurs before the earlier timestamp on the service form, yet includes a line confirming the order, already in hand. Two emails from the courthouse switchboard show mismatched sequence references. One says, Chaplin notified after confirmation, while the other reads, Chaplin's confirmation pending. The sent times overlap by 4 minutes. A gap appears in the internal log. Entries jump from 10:21 to 11:04 with no recorded actions, despite a docket sheet showing movement between those times. A correction log for the February 12 order shows 3 consecutive edits to the same detail, location of service, within a 10-minute window. 2 public statements issued weeks later include identical phrasing. Standard procedures were followed as required. The phrase does not appear in any prior documents or guidelines. In storage, the box labeled Paternity Case Support Material is missing one envelope referenced in the index card. A photographic record of the courthouse hallway from that morning shows 2 different setups of the same bench. One with a folder placed on the left side, another with it on the right, both time-stamped minutes apart. Receipts for courier services list a delivery to an address not appearing in any court communication logs. Interviews add further pressure. A clerk asked to confirm the February 12 timeline pauses before answering, then lists times that differ from her written notes. A bailiff checks his phone before stating the hour he entered Room 3B. 2 witnesses describing the morning's events offer conflicting sequences. One recalls the order being prepared after Chaplin arrived. The other recalls it being ready beforehand. During an interview, a staffer adjusts a document midway through the conversation, sliding a page slightly over the timestamp. Another repeats the phrase, as far as I know, 3 times in the same sentence, matching wording that appears verbatim in an unrelated statement filed by a different employee. A junior clerk refuses to speak about anything between 10:30 and 11:00, stating only that she wasn't involved in that part. An expert reviewing the procedural chain notes that a required step, verifying exact location of service, was not documented. One worker mentions briefly, "We weren't supposed to use that room," then changes the subject. 2 staffers interviewed separately use the same unusual phrase, the preliminary acknowledgement, a term that appears nowhere in court protocol. The clearest piece of evidence appears in a misfiled folder recovered from a box labeled for unrelated 1945 cases. Inside is a single, unindexed photograph. The image shows the corridor outside Room 3A at 10:45 a.m., confirmed by a visible wall clock. In the foreground, the bailiff stands with the test order envelope in his hand, an envelope supposedly delivered minutes earlier in Room 3B. Next to him is a clerk who did not appear in any of the logs for that hour, On the back of the photograph is a penciled note, "Hold until confirmation." No initials, no date. A copy of the same photo, cropped tightly around the bailiff, exists in the official archive, time-stamped 11/12, and listing the location as 3B corridor. The uncropped version shows clearly that he was standing by the wrong door at the wrong time with the envelope still sealed. The timeline repeated a missing hour. Two versions of the service record listed incompatible times. A signature appeared with two different formations of the same letter. A clerk placed herself at a location, absent from every log entry. A document added later contradicted its own carbon copy. A photograph confirmed the order was never delivered, where the record claimed. The pattern left no space to hide. The overlooked detail sits in the corner of the February 12 service form, a tiny, initialed notation, RH, written in pencil beside the overwritten room number. It appears faintly on the carbon copy as well, though smudged. Until now, it seemed like a routine clerk's mark. But a separate clerk schedule, filed weeks later in a different box, lists no employee with those initials on duty that morning. The initials do appear, however, on a courier receipt logged the previous day, February 11, not February 12. That receipt documents a delivery to a temporary holding office 2 floors above the courtroom, a location absent from every official paternity case record. The timestamp is 10:43 a.m., the exact minute the service form claimed Chaplin received the test order. No employee later acknowledged using that office. The first connection surfaces in an unrelated memo about storage consolidation. The same RH initials appear approving a transfer of paternity case envelopes to a locked cabinet, despite RH not being listed among staff authorized for evidence handling. A second link comes from an interview transcript. One clerk asked to describe the February 12 chain of custody mentions the upstairs handoff, before correcting herself and saying she meant the hallway. The building's layout shows only one upstairs office that matches the courier receipt's address, the unused temporary holding room. A third piece appears in the photographic record. In the uncropped hallway photo, a clipboard hangs next to room 3A. On the clipboard is a sheet with a partial signature. The first two letters match the same RH. That clipboard sheet does not exist in the official archive. A fourth connection comes from the correction log for the service timestamp. 3 edits occur in rapid succession, each made by a staff member who later stated they had no involvement in the February 12 amendments. The initials beside the last correction match those on the courier receipt. The fifth link is a line in a maintenance report filed that same week. Temporary room cleared, access logged by RH. No time, no date, no explanation, but the room number matches the same concealed upstairs address listed on the courier slip. The final click comes from a duplicate entry in the building's internal access ledger. Most entries list full names. One line, for February 12, lists only initials, RH, with a swipe-in time of 10:41 a.m. and a swipe-out time of 10:47 a.m. The location is the temporary holding room. That 6-minute window overlaps precisely with the supposed moment Chaplin was being served downstairs. The person whose initials appear everywhere, courier slips, memos, corrections, access logs, doesn't appear anywhere in the official paternity case staffing lists. No employment file, no duty roster, no witness sheet, yet the handwriting, the edits, the timestamps, and the room access all align. The individual who handled the test order wasn't recorded as part of the case at all. The final piece was always visible.